I always want to start with a reminder that multiple writers in the Bible put love as the top thing. Okay. And even when we get to the fruit of the Spirit, we're going to see in Galatians 5:22 that that love is the first one mentioned. Okay. It's the first fruit of the Spirit mentioned. So we've been over these passages many times, but love, charity, agape, selfless beneficence for the care of others, genuine selfless beneficence for the care of others is elevated highly in Scripture. And it's important that we don't forget that, because when Christianity becomes about being correct, it becomes rivalrous and we fail to love people properly. Okay? So when it comes to being correct or being truthful, it's helpful to think of some of these things as verbs rather than nouns. And that's a little tip that I think is helpful. Think of things like God, faith, truth. If you consider these things as verbs rather than nouns, that's a helpful way to look at it and to think of it, in my opinion. Yeah, Brian says, what do you mean? God doesn't do anything new, you heretic? And I know he's joking, but he's hitting close to home with how some people actually think and how they will find something wrong with everything you say. And they are out there, and we encounter them all the time. Or another way you could say it is, what's been handed to us traditionally from the Mammon Church isn't useful. Something like that. So we're constantly discovering what is useful in Scripture. In Galatians 5:22, it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Paul very commonly writes in what we call vices and virtues. Like right before this, he just listed a bunch of stuff you're not supposed to do. But he says here there are some things that are actually good to do. Okay. So, but I want to point out that it's the fruit of the Spirit. And what people do, what Christians do, they're like, oh, the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace. Well, they try to externally impose these things. Like they don't actually love, but they externally, artificially impose a behavior that mimics love to the, approximates love to the best of their ability. And if you're not in the spiritual condition to actually love, maybe there is some use to fake it till you make it in a non-deceptive kind of way. But what I want you to do, because we don't want to be mean to people, we don't want to be horrible to people, we don't want to be hurtful to people, but we also don't want to lack genuineness and psych ourselves out and make us think that we're spiritual when we're not. Okay. So you want to turn on the sensitivity to what's going on inside your body, because your body is sending you a lot of signals about, even though you're showing love and joy and peace and patience on the outside, your body may not be, you are really experiencing it on the inside. You're not really patient. You're waiting a long time for a particular thing, but you're not okay with it. And your body isn't okay with it. And you're living in anxiety and stress. And you have signals and hormones pumping through your body, cortisone. You have things like this going on because of this uncomfortable situation in which you find yourself, which you're not really content. So when Paul says, I found, no matter what's going on, I can be content, basically what Paul says, paraphrasing. Really content, like content on the inside, not just behaving like it on the outside. So we're pretty good at, I was raised in a Christian home, and there are certain behaviors that thankfully I've never done, certain impulses I've had that I've never done. Like I've never been a violent person. I've never gotten mad and thrown dishes across the house or punched anybody. I've never done any of those kinds of things, okay? Especially in a domestic setting. But there's been plenty of times where there's been absolute turmoil inside. Even though on the outside I'm behaving myself and I'm doing what is appropriate, there's turmoil on the inside. And when you can compare the external behavior versus what you're feeling on the inside, when you learn to sense what that is, that gives you kind of a litmus test or a measuring stick to tell how spiritual you are. Not to be all haughty and lifted up like I'm so spiritual, but so that you can have a reduced amount of unnecessary suffering in your life. Okay? You have a great deal of suffering for no reason at all. And we're going to talk about that when we get in touch with these things coming from the inside.